What's up, my friends? It is Secret Agent Storm, of course, and welcome back to another Fresh from the Theater reaction. Well, guys, today I just returned from seeing the new Mission Impossible movie, Fallout. And what is my initial reaction, fresh from the theater? Guys, this movie is awesome. Now, when it comes to Mission Impossible, I've been a fan since the first movie. The first movie came out in 1996, I believe, and I went and saw it with my friends in the theater, and when it came out on home release after that, VHS, I think I probably got on VHS for the first time. Oh boy, memories. But yeah, it was a go-to movie for me when it came out on home release after that. I love the Mission Impossible series. But as of late, recently, I haven't been following the franchise. I've been like an on and off fan of Mission Impossible. Like, I always go to the movies to see them, but I don't think I have any Mission Impossible films aside from the first one on my shelf. They're kind of just like theater movies for me, But Mission Impossible was like the 90s version of James Bond, right? It's kind of like my generation's James Bond. James Bond, of course, was popular during like the 50s and the 60s and stuff like that, and then they moved on to Mission Impossible in the 90s, which became kind of my generation's James Bond. And it even has, like its own theme song and everything, right? Like the movie, we start out with our introduction with all our characters, and then it breaks into the theme song. Bum 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 bum. Montage. And now, with Mission Impossible Fallout, they're continuing this awesome franchise. I mean, this is literally a franchise that just seems to keep getting better. I mean, even though you can find some weaknesses with every movie, it's like the only franchise out there right now that just like consistently gets better. No matter what it is, there's something about these movies that just strikes you, that just resonates with you. They are the best action movies I think that ever existed. I mean, since the first one came out in 1996, these have consistently been the best action movies to come out, and that's where this movie really shines. It's the action and the direction and the cinematography. My goodness, I mean, I'm just sitting here right now, like kind of just thinking about shots in this movie, just reminiscing about shots in this movie. It's like, I just saw this, like literally just walked out of the theater, 10 minutes ago, 5-10 minutes ago, and I'm already reminiscing about shots that I've seen in this movie. I mean, there's this one shot where like Tom Cruise is climbing up the rope of a helicopter, and the cinematography, they've got the mountains in the background with the mist and the blue and the gray sky with the white-capped mountains and the two helicopters, and Tom Cruise is just climbing up this rope. It looks like he's 50,000 feet in the air. I mean, you are talking about action sequences that are real. These are real stunts. They're real helicopters and cars and motorcycles, and Tom Cruise is once again doing all his own stunts. This is not, fake. These are real stuff. This is real stuff going on. That's what makes this movie so good. And combined with the directing, and the directing is something else that it just was absolutely outstanding in this movie. Not even necessarily for the action sequences, because the action sequences are phenomenal, obviously, but it's also the in-between moments where we get these very unique camera angles, this very kind of almost Spielberg-esque directing that he's putting on this, that is putting on the actors and the actresses and all the dynamics, kind of like this picture that you see behind me, right? It's like that kind of directing. It's like this really unique, captivating directing that keeps you locked in. And it's just unbelievable to see, because there are so many crappy action movies out there today that just don't put any effort into anything. Mission Impossible, once again, just puts the utmost effort. A-grade effort. This is the best of the best of the best that you could possibly receive from an action movie, and it is seriously breathtaking. Something else that really stood out to me in this movie directing-wise was all the hand-to-hand combat and all of the gunplay, because it has to do with what I was just talking about keeping you hooked in between all the action sequences, and they do that with stuff like gunplay and the hand-to-hand combat. It is so beautifully executed. And in particular, there's this one scene where Tom Cruise and Henry Cavill are going into a bathroom near the beginning of the movie looking for their contact, and it is without a doubt, I think the best fight sequence I have ever seen in an action movie, hand-to-hand combat. It is unbelievable, and I don't want to give too much away. Like, I mean, I could sit here and just like describe the fight to you guys, but I'm just gonna say it's the bathroom sequence. Just go into the movie and watch the bathroom sequence. It is the best hand-to-hand combat fight like I've ever seen. I mean, not, excluding, kung fu movies and karate movies, obviously, stuff like that. In action movie, this is the best hand-to-hand combat scene I think I've ever seen. It was phenomenally directed and executed and choreographed. It was so well done, and that's just, that's Mission Impossible for you, man. They do everything so right. Now, with all that said, though, I did have a few issues with the movie. I mean, this movie is awesome. I really did love it, but I did have a few issues with the movie, and unfortunately, a lot of it has to do with the overall story. The overall story I found to be surprisingly a little bit bland and uneventful and kind of boring at moments. I would call it hollow is the word I would use for it. It's just like, it felt like it was missing something. Like it was missing something, and I think a lot of it had to do with how basic the story was. The story is kind of basic. By the end of the movie, I have to say that I kind of felt surprised that was it. I was kind of like, the setup and the premise is perfect for a Mission Impossible story, but by the end of the movie, you're kind of like, oh, like that was it. Like that was all that was going on. Like it was just kind of like, it's just kind of like a basic kind of heist terrorist spy movie setup. With again, I can't give too much away, but if you guys have seen any kind of like 90s action movie about a terrorist, terrorists usually get their hands on something and they usually do something and have plans for that something. It's like that kind of a setup. It's kind of like, okay, well, I need something more. You know what I'm saying? Like, the execution was great, but the overall story was kind of bland. It was kind of like uneventful in a lot of ways. It felt like it was missing something. And a lot of that also, unfortunately, comes from the acting. I mean, the acting in this movie is fine, it's perfectly serviceable, but I literally felt like everybody in this movie was giving a kind of mailed-in performance. And I know, like Henry Cavill's character in this is supposed to be like that. He's supposed to be a very kind of muted kind of, army meathead. But I just felt like Tom Cruise was mailing it in a lot of places. And basically, like, everybody else was just kind of there. They were just kind of there, just like doing their performances. That's what I felt, is that like none of the characters sucked me in. Like, the story and the execution was great, and that kept me hooked, but none of the characters really kept me hooked. It was like, hey, here's this character and here's this character, and then we're just gonna do our jobs and just go through the movie, which is fine because it's a Mission Impossible movie. You're expecting certain setups, but you also have to keep it fresh. You have to really kind of keep your characters new and fresh. If you repeat your characters and you keep your characters uneventful, then the movie becomes uneventful, the story becomes uneventful, because you find yourself not caring as much as you should. The story shouldn't be the only thing carrying itself. Your actors need to be giving really great performances to keep us locked in, and that didn't happen all the way through the movie. But as I said before, this movie is just awesome. It's unbelievably awesome. It is brilliantly directed. The action is absolutely outstanding. The movie may be a little bit hollow. The story may be a little bit generic. But the directing, the cinematography, the execution is perfect. It is yet another legendary spectacle in a long line of legendary spectacles that is the Mission Impossible franchise. So I've got no problem giving this an absolutely phenomenal score of bam! 90%. You guys, 90% is what I've got. A fantastic score for a fantastic movie. I do highly, highly recommend that you guys go out and see this in the theater. Definitely see it in IMAX and 3D if you can. I mean, I don't particularly like 3D, but definitely IMAX, because this movie is a spectacle. You have to, it's one of those movies that's just an experience to watch. The action is just so perfectly executed, and it really does put all action movies to shame. same. This Mission Impossible has been the standard for action movies since 1996, and once again, they did. I mean, this might be the best Mission Impossible film probably since the first one, right? I mean, it has to be. It was just absolutely amazing. I cannot wait to go back out and see this in the theater again. Come join me for a second, third, or fourth viewing because it absolutely deserves it. Well, my friends, that's going to do it for this fresh from the theater reaction to Mission Impossible Fallout. Now it's time for you guys to leave all of your thoughts, opinions, and your scores, of course, down below in the Great White Void. And as always, until next we meet, take care, and now it's time for me to go on my secret mission. That's right, Secret Master Storm, SMS. That's right, Special Services, Special Secret Services. You don't believe me? Come on, let's go check it out.